A child murderer in Kentucky was just released after only serving 9 years in prison, less than half of his 20-year prison sentence. His name was Ronald Exantis, and he actually killed a 6-year-old boy while he slept by stabbing him in the head with a kitchen knife. Not only did he kill this 6-year-old little boy, he attacked his 2 older sisters and the boy's father with a knife, stabbing all 3 of them. Now, you might wonder how a child murderer only got off by doing 9 years instead of his 20 years, which was even a light sentence then. It should have been a full life sentence. This is how it all happened. Ronald Exantis was a dialysis nurse in Indianapolis, Indiana. He started his day just like any other day, but for whatever reason, he described going into a trance and driving to a random neighborhood in Kentucky that he had never been to. Ronald Exantis, the murderer, described as going into this trance-like state and going to a neighborhood he'd never been to in Versailles, Kentucky, where he chose a random neighborhood, a random house, and he just figured out if he could get into the house or not, and he did. Now, it's unclear if he broke the door or went through the window. I couldn't actually find that information, if they might have left the door unlocked, if it was a safe neighborhood. I don't know. But he didn't come prepared. He actually took a kitchen knife from their kitchen and then stabbed Logan Tipton, a 6-year-old little boy, in his head while he was asleep. He then worked his way upstairs, and that's where the dad, Dean Tipton, actually confronted him. And Dean Tipton is a pretty large man. And he described Ronald as having superhuman strength because he said he literally picked me up and threw me 10 to 15 feet and then stomped on my head. He then proceeded to stab Dean Tipton's other kids, his daughters. And at that time, Dean Tipton was able to get up and subdue him until the police arrived. And apparently it was all he could do to keep him subdued while the police arrived. Let's get into why he only served 9 years of a 20-year sentence, which to me is despicable, okay? Well, so Kentucky has an old law that says that you can earn time off your sentences by doing good behavior and learning educational skills. Some of these educational skills, no joke, include learning how to play guitar. This man got a year shaved off of his sentence because he learned how to play guitar. So our tax dollars are paying for child killers to learn how to play guitar and then get out early on good behavior. And shocker, by the way, only 3 weeks later, this man's back in prison for breaking parole. Okay, so literally the judge himself was like, I don't think this guy's a danger to society because that was a freak thing. The reason why he only got sentenced to 20 years is he actually got convicted of not guilty on the murder of Logan Tipton, the 6-year-old, because he pled insanity. I can't even fathom, like, insane or not, you shouldn't be allowed to go back onto the streets. If that's the kind of insane you are, you don't need to be out here on the streets with the rest of us, okay? You need to be in an institution for the rest of your life. 9 years of a 20-year sentence. It's, as you can imagine, his family is outraged. He even said, the father even said, is my 6-year-old little boy's life not worth more than a 9-year prison sentence? His daughters were also stabbed. His mother's described it as, you might as well killed our whole family that night because none of us have been the same afterwards. If you notice my phone is shaking right now, I'm at a state of like, you guys might have known that about a week ago, we started doing, these videos on like child crimes and stuff and trying to bring awareness to protect your children. And it's almost one of those things where, like, you almost have to stop. Like, you want to bring the awareness, but you almost have to get away from it because, like, what it's doing to me right now is making me so amped up, it can't be good for my heart. Like, I don't understand how this stuff happens in the world. There is, like, an uproar in Kentucky right now. There's been, like, protests and riots. They're wanting those laws to be changed because this man was obviously... Okay, even if he was insane, I don't think he was. I think that's just the plea they did. But even because he was a dialysis nurse, this man was smart enough to get like degrees and he worked at the hospital. How did no one notice that if he really was insane? But beyond that, how did anybody think this is okay for this child killer to get good behavior and to let him out early? It doesn't make sense. There's no way you can make it make sense. And let's continue the craziness. He was sentenced to 20 years. He got out early at 9 years. 3 weeks later, he breaks parole, goes back to prison. He'll be out in a year again. These only re-upped his sentence another year. What the hell are y'all doing? Like, what is going on? Somebody in Kentucky, if you're out there, let me know what you guys think, because there's been so many people online that says if we see him in the streets, we're just taking care of it. And that's exactly essentially what he felt as well, because as soon as he got out, he went to Florida, which I think that's how he broke his parole, he left the state. Just doesn't make any sense to anyone, anywhere. What? The only thing I can think of is the powers that are at be really are after your all's children. And child crimes are not taken nearly seriously enough. One of my friends actually had to rescue his kids from a child trafficking like sex organization. This was a cult. I'm not going to tell his name because his kids share his names, and even though they're adults now, I'm sure they don't want everybody in their life knowing that they went through this. But I will tell you the name of the cult because there was literally thousands of children involved in this, and it was the Latter-day Saints cult that was led by Warren Jeffs. He had somewhere between 70 and 80 wives, and he like ruled this cult with an iron fist. So essentially, my buddy, what had happened to him is he had got a divorce with his wife, and they had split custody over their children, which he had 6 kids, by the way. And he had split custody of them. And I guess she started seeing this Warren Jeffs guy, and she actually ran away with a few of the kids, and he didn't see them for years. I mean, this literally for years, he had no clue what happened to his kids. Of course, the FBI is involved. You guys can look up. There's tons of info online about this Latter-day Saints cult led by Warren Jeffs. And he had, like I said, between 70 and 80 wives. So my buddy's ex-wife was just one of many, many wives this guy had. And essentially what he would do is after he would like brainwash these women and trick and deceive these women, he would talk about how like they could sleep with the other church members, the other cult members, and that would make them like more pure. So he was essentially kind of spinning it like they were doing these children a favor and saving their souls and stuff. And essentially he would send them on like circuits and routes where these kids would get stuck in the back of a van and taken to all of his like clients. His, that's what they were. They were not a church or any religious organization in any way, shape, or form. It was all just a facade in order to essentially do whatever the heck they wanted to and have multiple wives and have like sex children just everywhere. I mean, like some of these guys were married to literal like 8-year-old kids, like just the most sick, disturbing stuff you could ever imagine. So my friend actually had to rescue his kids from this because over the years of working with the FBI on this, he actually made a pretty good friendship with one of the FBI agents. This is another reason I'm not going to say this because his friend that he made in the FBI is still in the FBI. But he made really good friends with one of the coordinators that was busting up the Warren Jeffs situation. Anyhow, every time the FBI was closing in on a location they believed a bunch of these children to be like stored or housed at, the cult would move. And it would reset them having to get warrants. They'd have to find out where they went again because of all the legalities, even though they would know, hey, these kids are in that house over there, or they're in this warehouse or whatever. It would take them a week or two to get all the proper warrants and paperwork and everything else. And by then the kids would just be moved again. And this process repeated for years. So the informant essentially, or the coordinator essentially told my buddy, hey, we know some of the kids are in this facility. Can't guarantee you they're your kids, but we know that there's a good majority of those kids that are being transported to this place. Problem is we can't go in there. Wink, wink. You're a private citizen. We can't control what you do. So my friend actually this is before I knew him, or I would have been in on this rally as well. He got his friends and his family, and they quite literally went out there with, their weapons and just took the law into their own hands. They raided this themselves. And weird kind of twist with this is because of the gunshots that were involved, the FBI were watching this facility. Whenever they had heard the gunshots and all that stuff, that actually superseded any kind of warrants they needed, and they were able to do an emergency and go in and assist right away. None of the cult members were shot during this. My friend, they actually just shot for this exact purpose, this exact reasoning, like into the air and stuff. And there was more than 20 kids out of that compound that were rescued, and they were his kids. And he was actually reunited with his kids after, I believe it was a little over 2.5 or maybe 3 years. He later told me that he never really got his kids back, though, even though, he was super thankful, obviously. His kids were not the same. They were incredibly dangerous to be around. He could not leave them around any of his other kids alone because of what they would do to each other. He had now remarried. He could not leave his kids alone around them, his new wife, because they quite literally thought that was like something they should do. They've been brainwashed to think like, if somebody is doing me a favor, that is what I need to do to them, because that's releasing the sins. It took them years to get over that. And by the time that happened, my friend unfortunately did pass away very young. Not really sure all the complications he had going on in his life. Don't want to get into all that, but anyhow, he did pass away very young. I've actually had a lot of people in my life pass away very young. I've had a lot of loss. So his story was just so incredible because, like, I mean, he turned himself into essentially like the law himself. And, you know, most people say, I'll do anything for my kids, but they don't ever really get a chance to prove it. Well, he did. I mean, he traveled halfway across the country. I mean, armed to the teeth, you know, ready to go in, guns blazing to get his kids back. And that's exactly what he did. It's just, you know, sad that he had to pass away so young, but such a wonderful story that he was able to get his kids out of that situation. So many other people, you know, their kids get lost into that kind of stuff and they never see them ever again. Or know what happened to them. You know, not only did he know what happened, he was able to actually get them back. Now, weirdly enough, I don't think his ex-wife ever got charged with anything. Most of the wives of that cult didn't get charged with anything because it was all considered brainwashing and he said, she said, implausible deniability, blah, 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 blah. Now, Warren's Jeff, if you look him up, he is serving like multiple life sentences. Like, I mean, he's on the FBI's like top 10 wanted list. He was actually on the FBI's top 10 wanted list when she met him. Like, if that wasn't a red flag enough. So here's a pretty crazy story that happened in my hometown that literally everybody knows and talks about, but no one can do anything about. And it's been on like true crime podcasts. It's been on like some true crime stuff. But here it is. I actually grew up with a guy, went to church with him every Sunday for years. You know, he was in trouble with the law, you know, every once in a while, you know, what have you. And he got married. And one day him and his wife went to a famous park called Burgess Falls State Park. And then apparently he just like went missing and no one could find him. And then like that same day, his wife was like riding around with a new dude in the car and they like went to his aunt's house. No one had reported him missing yet, apparently. So the aunt was like, who's that guy in your car and where's he at? And I don't want to say the names because this person will probably just immediately try to sue or something. And, you know, and it's already gone through the court that apparently she had nothing to do with it. But the aunt was like, you know, hey, where's he at? And she was like, oh, yeah, we went to the park earlier and can't find him. And she's like, whoa, what do you mean you can't find him? And you're running around with some new guy, you're married, and you're wanting to get his stuff from my house that he had stored here? No, that's not cool. So then they officially report him missing. Literally the next day on Facebook, his wife said that she was in a relationship with a new dude while he's still missing. She's not helping look for him, doesn't go to any of the search parties, whatever. And no one ever found him. They think that he fell off a cliff and like fell into the water, and then like months and months went by and they finally found his dead body. But like, I guess that's the mysterious thing about dying at a park like that, off a cliff, is because no one's going to be able to say if her new man pushed him, if she pushed him, or if he jumped off himself. Like, why he would do that, I don't know. But because when you fall, you know, you can't tell what happened before you fell. But pretty much everybody in the town thinks and knows that she did it or had somebody do it, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. And then like when people see her in the town, they just have to like pretend they don't know anything about it. And like you know, imagine you're like working at the Dollar General and she comes to the line, you just have to serve her like she's another customer, and in your head you're thinking like, oh my god, this is a murderer. Everybody knows about it. Famous historical crimes and mysteries that have been solved recently due to huge advances in technology that no one seems to know have been solved. Why aren't we talking about that we know who Jack the Ripper is? I didn't know that. There's like all kinds of documentaries that still come on History Channel. We know who he is. So here's the biggest rabbit hole you can go down is most of the genealogy companies are like state and government funded. They might be privately owned, but they might be government funded, like in the back door. And it's wild. Why, guys? This is crazy. I'm all for it, by the way, because if you got nothing to hide, you got nothing to hide. But then at the end of the day, you're like, they could misuse that DNA, I guess. So the Golden State Killer, one of the famous killing sprees from the 70s and 80s, was actually found out and discovered because on Ancestry.com, his like great nephew or something sent in an ancestry report for like a project in school. Now, they never could find a DNA match for the Golden State Killer, but with leaps and bounds in technologies now, we don't have to have your exact DNA. We just have to have somebody's DNA that's related to you, and it will be a close enough match for them to go, oh my God, somebody in this family is the Golden State Killer. So then they got warrants to test everybody's DNA in that family. And then they're like, okay, this guy's probably the great nephew or the grandson or something. Okay, this guy's probably like a first cousin, so it has to be one of these people. Oh my God, this is probably a brother to the Golden State Killer. Bam, we found him. Okay, so they were able to narrow it down between this massive family because one kid's project for school that got sent into Ancestry.com. Now, the Golden State Killer didn't get captured until nearly 50 years after his crime, so he was in his 70s, and guess what? He was a former police officer. This is him. Next is Jack the Ripper. I did not know that for like the past 6 years we've known who Jack the Ripper is, but there's people that are disputing it, and it's kind of funny on why. But anyhow, there was a forensic scientist that was able to take a scarf or a shawl that was left over from one of the crime scenes, and it was one of the original suspects. I believe his name was Aaron something. He was like a Polish immigrant, and when he moved from the area, that's when the killing stopped. We know it was him. We know it was. It's like a 99.9% match. The people that are disputing it, though, guess what they do? Guess what they do for a living? They study historical crimes. So, like, if the crime was solved, guess who's got to get a new job on Monday? You know, because Jack the Ripper, the biggest case of all, got solved. More than 65 years ago, America's biggest cold case of all time, the boy in the box. It was when a estimated to be 4 or 5-year-old little boy was found in Philadelphia in a cardboard box. They could not even identify who the little boy was, so how could they ever try to find a murderer for this little boy, right? Now, to this day, we actually still don't know who did the crime, but we actually know who the little boy is. Back in 2022, once again, it was one of those Ancestry.com type pages. Somebody sent in their DNA, and it was a distant cousin of this boy, this DNA record that they kept on file this whole time. They were able to track that family down, go through all their family records, and they finally found a little boy who was reported missing. You know, like I said, this was 65 years ago, a long time before like all the nice, neat records that we keep today. So it took a long time to figure out who that little boy was, and at least now we know who he was. The mystery boy was 4-year-old Joseph Augustus Zarelli. So you guys might have seen the classic movie Anastasia and not known what it was about. The Romanov family was all executed during a political uprising, okay? But there was like rumors for decades and decades, even to this day, that Anastasia and Alexei actually escaped. And that's what that movie, that old cartoon classic movie is all about, is them escaping and living like this secret life and, you know, trying to return to power and all this stuff. Well, it turns out, DNA-wise, that we have found their bodies. They were also, during that execution, they did not survive that. So that movie might be cool and all. It might be a classic. I don't know if it's made by Disney or not. It might be a classic, but it is not true. They never got out. We thought they got out because we couldn't find their bodies. We had their bodies the whole time. They just got mixed in with some other bodies. And DNA tests, modern day, prove that Anastasia and Alexei never survived that night. So now I'm just waiting on the Tupac thing to get solved, because if you guys don't know the Tupac rabbit hole conspiracy of he's still out there and alive, there's not just people that say that he's out there and they claim to see him and stuff. There was a lot of stuff he said before he died that makes it all seem very true. He literally labeled his last album Machiavelli. Do you all know what Machiavelli is? That was like a 16th century literature dude. I don't really know. But anyhow, he was famous for making this story up about a guy who fakes his own death by getting a lookalike to die for him in a very public setting while he snuck away somewhere else and started a whole new life over because he was sick and tired of his old life. Tupac's last album that released just a little bit before his death was called Machiavelli, somebody who was famous for making that story up. I mean, Tupac died in a very public place where everyone could see, right? Or did he? Was that a lookalike? That's kind of weird. I was thinking about what video I could do for you guys, and I'm feeling pretty beat down today, so I'm going to talk about a time that I actually did get beat down. If you guys knew, before I got into all the animal stuff and taking care of animals and rescuing animals, I was a piece of crap car salesman. I managed car dealerships for a decade. This is when I had just started. I was still a car salesman at this point. And I came in, I was trying to work a car deal. I always got there an hour early so I could catch service customers that were having a bad day with a broken down vehicle first thing in the morning, and I would try to get them to trade their car. So I'm talking to the sales manager of, I'd been waiting on him forever, and one of the sales guys come in, and he'd been having a rough night. I guess him and his old lady were going through a divorce or something, but he was still heavily drunk from the night before. So he was a big guy. I'm not a big guy. At the time, I was really athletic and really in shape. You can't tell it now with my farm body, but at that time, I was huge, right? I was big. I was working out all the time. And he was way taller than me, 6'3", 6'4", big heavy set guy. And he comes leaning over on me, and he's just breathing this alcohol breath in me, and I'm just oh man. And I kind of like told him, I was like, man, stop breathing on me. Like, shut up, dude. I'm trying to work this car deal, because he's just belligerent. And he said, you don't tell me to shut up. And I was like, I do what I want. Shut up. Have you guys ever watched The Simpsons where Homer chokes Bart and like lifts him off the ground and Bart's like, "Ah!" That's what happened to me. I got Barted, okay? I got Homer Simpsoned. The next thing I know, one of his hands is around the front of my throat, the other hand is around the back of my throat, and I'm off the ground. And I'm like, ah! And then he slams my face through one of those, like, you know, those $3,000 printers, like those big printers, right through the glass. And I'm like looking around, and I see Louie, the sales manager, on the other side, and he's just looking back at me. I'm like, I don't know what to do in this situation. So I got my hand free, and I punched the dude in the throat. And he was like gasping for air, so he let go. He's like, and he let go. And I'm like, okay, I better clock this dude before he grabs me again. Too late. He got me again. And I'm just getting Bart Simpson choked. And this dude's arms were so much longer than mine. I couldn't even like reach him good when he had me. And anyhow, the sales manager got one of his arms, got him off of me. I hit him again, and like, I mean, I can't breathe. And anyhow, he immediately goes and sits down. Like, I'm wanting to be like angry and like continue this fight, you know. And he goes and sits down and just starts crying, like put his head in his hands and starts crying like a baby. And I was like, well, now, like, we can't fight. You're over here crying. Like, now why do I feel like the jerk in this situation all of a sudden? And then he explained the whole thing, and then we became really good friends. And me and him were really good friends for a long time. I haven't seen him in like a decade. I hope he's doing well. And by the way, ladies, that's how men are. Like, we can get into a drag-out fight, and we'll probably honestly respect each other more and like each other more after that fight than we ever did beforehand. Because now, after that, me and him both knew that we were both crazy. Like, so it kind of made us respect each other, and we always knew we'd have each other's backs.